And welcome viewers to the daily space weather. We're looking at Sunspot 2750 in all of its former glory as it has evaporated. There's a small coronal mass ejection headed our way. Nothing to really write home about. And a whole bunch of other stuff to cover. So join us for the space weather! So here's the 171 angstroms view. And there's that sunspot. That's Sunspot 2750. And that is a member of solar cycle 25. Although it's no longer a sunspot as the umbra has vanished. So it was a short-lived sunspot at a very high latitude near the southern pole. And here's the current state of magnetism, complete with date stamps. And you can see that the fields have weakened. It was only an alpha class sunspot in the first place, and it's already been reduced to a plage, a synonym for a sandy beach, not to be confused with a plague, which is something that happens at times of solar minimum. Now here we got the visual light, and you can see sunspot is there, and now it's gone. I know it's pretty tough to see. It's a very small sunspot to begin with, but you can see that it is now evaporated, no dark umbra visible. Next we'll look at that coronal mass ejection. It's pretty minor, and it does appear to be Earth-facing as we see a small halo here at the end. See a little bit of a halo there if you look closely, and not expected to be a huge impact from this one, as it was pretty diffuse and it might even miss the Earth to the south. And let's look at the X-ray environment real quick while we're here on the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard. And thanks, viewers, for being space weather enthusiasts. Here's the X-ray scenario. You can see that plage near the equator, as well as that now plage, formerly Sunspot 2750, down in the south at that high southern latitude. And let's continue on, as there's a lot of stuff to cover. And pardon our lateness, folks. Even I sleep in once in a while, and sometimes Saturdays involves such sleeping in. There's the X-ray flux. We didn't really see any flares. Kind of a surprise there. Expected to see a small uptick in the X-ray flaring. Moving on to the solar wind, we see a pretty high BT in this top pane. The black line is the total power of the B field. But the BZ is quite north-oriented. That's the red line. Phi angle is at 251 degrees, and the solar wind density 3.43 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed has been ticking down over the past 16 hours to 362 kilometers per second. And happy All Souls Day, folks. Now we've got the souls in the pumpkins.
The smAsho.
We've got the souls in the pumpkins, and we're going to let the souls out of the pumpkins later. Because we don't really want to keep the souls in the pumpkins. So, since it's All Souls Day, we'll release all 24 souls that we've demonically placed inside of pumpkins.
Yes, the souls are now in the jack-o'-lanterns.
Anyway, if you're interested in reading about All Souls Day, we've put a link below the video to the All Souls Day Wikipedia article. You've got Halloween, then you've got All Saints Day, and then you've got All Souls Day. Basically, answers to the pagan holiday of Halloween, and let's continue on with more data here. There's the ACE data, so showing the solar wind about the same as Discover. We see some power outages here in the Northeast. Maine and New York especially, about 160,000 without power in those areas, according to poweroutage.us. And we see a weak magnetosphere with a KP index of 0 for an extended period. Did you know I was going to say that already? Anyway, here's the Geospace Magnetosphere movie. Looking at the Earth from a zoomed out, spaced out type of a perspective, we see a very weak pressure. And we're talking magnetohydrodynamic pressure in the geospace. Next, we'll look at the closer up view here. Changes in the Earth's B field, known as geospace delta B, and there aren't very many changes at all. Although the main perturbations we see are in around the coastline between Antarctica and the southern Indian Ocean there, west of Australia, as well as the Canadian North Pole. And we see much less activity over the Siberian North Pole, as we've been seeing for the past, indeed, several months. .7 centimeter radial flux has come up to 71, and now we're actually on or above this orange line that we've drawn in at 70 solar flux units. And that's good news, folks, as solar minima are not good for your health. Here's the GOES magnetometer, and it's looking a little smoothed out, and we saw some surprising stuff here. That sunspot evaporated a little more quickly than we thought it would, and it did not affect the fields as intensely as we thought it would either. Here's the GONG 2 data, top view ecliptic plane field plot, and I expected us to be solidly in the North Pole oriented portion of the current sheet shown in green, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen. It looks like we're going to stay in the south, folks, especially since that sunspot's evaporated. There's the last frame, this data 1 hour and 32 minutes old, and there you can see this extended period of KP0. That's 18 hours, so we're reaching a KP0 day, a full day, a human cosmic ray health alert, perhaps. In fact, let's look at the cosmic ray stations. And we did leave links to this site also, which contains a whole bunch of cosmic ray stations. Here's Evaporates in Barentsburg, and we can see a general uptick. Actually, not really a significant uptick there at Evaporates. And Barentsburg, we saw a little spike yesterday on All Saints Day. Nothing to write home about there. Let's look at Athens. And there's the Athens monitor, and we see a large spike. And it looks like some missing data there, as it hasn't been updated recently in the past couple of days. Perhaps on vacation over there in Greece, but we saw the highest levels in 30 days on the 29th and 30th of October at Athens. And now we're looking at Mexico City. And actually a downtick in cosmic rays at Mexico City. Full data set available there. Next we'll look at Moscow. Looks like they're missing a little data there too. They saw a big uptick on the 30th as well. But the highest levels we've seen there in the past 30 days were around October 10th. Next we'll look at Oulu, Finland, apparently spaceweather.com's favorite site, and I think it's mine too. Also, it's very well formatted. The data is very easily accessible, so if you want to go look up the real cosmic ray maximum that's been measured, cosmic ray maximum, there you go, I said it, cosmic ray maximum. By the way, it happened back here in 2010 at Oulu. Anyway, there's the data from Oulu. Here's the data from DOMC Antarctica, and there's DOMB Antarctica. Let's move on to the electrons. And there's the GOES electron flux. Fairly high levels here, nothing too extreme. Relativistic electrons are still at high levels, but not at ultra high levels. Since we don't have the charging hazards available, that's been down since Halloween, I decided to put up this one, the Van Allen probe's radiation belt plots, as we've got spacecraft that are flying in this sort of a elliptical orbit in and out of the Van Allen belts to measure them. So that is an interesting data point here. We're going to continue keeping this one on the daily space weather videos here for a while, as perhaps we can corroborate even more data this way. Please leave a comment if you see the pattern. Next, we'll check out the ionosphere movies. We're looking at 6 hours of ionospheric activity here. And the daytime side is looking pretty normal, which right now is about over, I don't know, Africa. Over India, I should say. As it's about 9:30 UT when this video was shot. Nearly 6 a.m. Again, pardon the lateness, folks. Anyway, the ionosphere is looking a little anomalous in the southern hemisphere nighttime side. Otherwise, nothing to write home about there. Let's do the earthquake rundown. The past 24 hours saw a 4.0 in Turkey. That one coming in at 1017 UT. We're only covering 4+ magnitude quakes as the 7+ magnitude quake drought continues. If you're in an area capable of receiving a quake of that magnitude, please have a plan as earthquake droughts end in earthquakes. So we see a 5.3 in Nicaragua. Looks like an earthquake lull to me. What do you say, folks? 4.7 in Indonesia. 4.9 at Philippines. As we've seen an uptick there, 2 magnitude 6 quakes in the past couple weeks. 4.5 at Vostok. And that's not Lake Vostok, that's Vostok Island, I think. And I'm not even going to look because there's a lot of stuff to cover yet. 4.0 at Guatemala's next. This one coming in at 2025 UT yesterday evening. 4.3 at Argentina. That one at nearly 200 kilometers depth. Western South America remains my favorite place for a 7 magnitude earthquake amid this massive earthquake drought. 4.6 in China. That one located well in the continent. Doesn't appear to be anywhere near a plate boundary. Let's take a look at that one. In western Zhejiang. Zhejiang. Dang. Located on the Tibetan Plateau. There's the location of that quake. And headed back to the list. Next is at 2343 UT, a 4.1 at Chile. Next is the 4.9 at Indonesia. That one coming in at 2:41 AM UTC. Next we see a 4.4 at the Philippines. That one at extreme depth, nearly 300 kilometers. Perhaps the Philippines will be the spot for the 7 magnitude earthquake drought to finally end. And I don't know how I zoomed in, but this site makes me want to rip my hair out by the roots. 4.9 at Papua New Guinea is the last on the list of 4+ magnitude quakes for the past 24. Again, my favorite spot is still Western South America for that magnitude 7 drought to end. Let's look at the pressure maps on windy.com and get that crap off my screen. By the way, windy.com has a great mobile app that I like even better than the web browser version. But the mobile app, fantastic, folks, seriously. Install it on your phone. It's free. You won't regret it. Anyway, there are the pressure maps. We've advanced that about 12 hours here. And I'll pause it about 24 hours in from when we shot the video. And there are the location of pressure cells. And let's move on to the volcano rundown. Which volcanoes have been erupting, you ask? All right, well, I'll inform. Mount Aso is producing a 7,000-foot ash plume. Sakurajima exploded, produced a 9,000-foot ash plume. Dacono exploding, 6,000-foot plume there. Carinci, 14,000-foot plume there. Popocatépetl, possible new emissions there. Revenador still exploding, 15,000-foot plume there. Excuse me, Sabancaya still exploding, 23,000-foot plume there. Copahu unable to detect, perhaps a cloudy day on the satellite images. And Nevados de Chilean still exploding, producing a 14,000-foot ash plume. Please do not fly a home-built kit helicopter over the caldera of Nevados de Chilean. Here's where stuff is. Milky Way Galaxy team for the win. And there's where stuff will be in 1 week as Mercury swings into a conjunctive position and full moon approaches. Here's where stuff is above my head. And if you want to make yourself a sky map, check out in-the-sky.com. And I'm sorry, it's in-the-sky.org. Cygnus has already set. And yeah, we're going to talk about Cygnus X3 again, as if we're beating a dead horse. Anyway, there's a lightning situation. Let's zoom out. If you want to know where lightning's striking, especially if you hear thunder above your head, check out lightningmaps.org. It's good stuff. Now, we do see some Yeti activity here in southwestern Iowa, northwestern Iowa, northern South Dakota, and especially in Nebraska, in eastern Nebraska. You see that circular snow pattern? That's a sure indication that Yeti have gated into the area. And if you're wondering what happened to all the Sasquatches, they go south for the winter because they have brown coats instead of white coats, and Yeti with the snow and so on. Check out the temperature anomalies. The planet is so hot that it's cold, folks. And I haven't looked at this model yet. This is the GFS model, courtesy Tropical Tidbits. And the country's looking a little bit on the cold side. Those purples are negative 12 degrees C below normal for this time of year. Let's let it play through. Looks like it's a lengthy cold pulse. And I'll just speed that up and let it loop. Anyway, there's the forecast, courtesy Tropical Tidbits, complete with date stamps. It looks like cold pulse after cold pulse, making it all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico and especially the eastern portion of the U.S. Everything east of the Rockies is going to be cold, followed by cold, followed by cold. Check out the water vapor map, and there's the U.S. water vapor scenario. You see a long line of dry air being compressed by the jet stream, going all the way from Nova Scotia to Utah. And I do see quite an odd convergence zone here over New Mexico. Let's zoom in on that. And for those of you who were with us when we were making the fake news weather reports, we talked about dry air stabbing into the wet air, stabbing into the wet air. Well, this time we got wet air stabbing into the dry air. Check it out. Major convergence going on there. Notice the way the water vapor lines are perpendicular to the mode of this motion of this water here. That's induced by electrical current in the atmosphere, folks. It's not chemtrails. It's not contrails. The resolution on these maps is 2 kilometers. And here's the globe water vapor view from the Pacific Ocean. Here's a similar view in terms of jet stream. And let's move it around to the western jets so we can see Europe, South America, and Western Africa. We see a very strong concentration of the jet stream there southeast of Greenland, as well as some anticyclones there, one in the North Atlantic, and one over southern South America, actually. And let's spin it around to the eastern world. There are the jet streams in the east. And let's move on as there's more stuff to cover. Please press like and subscribe if you enjoy the content on our channel. We've recently reached 1,400 subscribers, and thanks to our new subscribers, although we don't consider 1,400 any sort of a milestone, help us reach 2,000, help us reach 20,000, as this channel ain't going nowhere except up, and the sophistication of these videos is going to continue to increase thanks to people like our Patreons. So thanks, Patreons. And gold patrons have noticed that they're receiving more benefits at the $9.99 a month level, and there's a reason for that. And it's because, well, it's partially because YouTube and Google don't pay us anything for these videos. They figure out ways to throttle the content and demonetize the videos as they get views. So please support us via Patreon. It makes a huge difference. A huge difference. And thanks again, patrons, for being associate producers of these videos. Let's talk about galactic wind. It's pretty important stuff. And here's a quick animation from the Keck Cosmic Web Imager. It's a kind of an important article here for all you cosmology nerds, as it is about intergalactic dust and about the jets coming out of galaxies. Now, this fantastic image here from the Keck Cosmic Web Imager is of galactic jets, and This is ionized oxygen, and what you're looking at is red shifted and blue shifted ionized oxygen as the one jet's pointed toward you and the one jet's pointed away. And it appears to show two different episodes of jet production, as this thing seems to be blasting dust, or perhaps energizing the dust out in the galaxy. Here's an image of it in radio. And the galaxy itself is only this tiny green circle there. All the rest is ejected dust. It means that they can actually confirm it's moving gas from the galaxy into the circumgalactic regions around it, as well as sweeping up more gas from its surrounding as it's moved out. What are the implications to that? It's moving a lot of dust, at least 1 to 10% of the visible mass of the entire galaxy at very high speeds, thousands of kilometers per second. If you want to read the article, and you should, we've left links below the video in the description box, so click that after you become our next patron and help support the channel. Anyway, seriously, read the article. It's pretty interesting, as the implications for galactic wind are very important to the cosmic galactic web. And just to reiterate the importance of Cygnus X3, now this is disputed as to its distance, as it's very tough to tell the distance to an object where you're looking directly down one of its jets. But Cygnus X3 is within our own galaxy, and let's consider the implications of Cygnus X3's jets. As we know, these things can be very, very long, hundreds of millions of light years long, when they're on the galactic scale. What is it like when they're the most luminous intrinsic object in the entire galaxy, at least as far as we can see from the perspective of our solar system? Cygnus X3, the tail of the swan, known as the star Deneb, part of the Summer Triangle. I don't know how much you know about Cygnus X3, but say hello to my little friend, which is an object that is orbiting Cygnus X3, or appears to be orbiting Cygnus X3, at least affecting its spectral class massively. And so read up about it, as this is the artist's conception of what's going on there. It appears a high-mass, very cold object is siphoning the plasma off of the star, and you're viewing it from the perspective of inside this jet. Please leave a comment if you feel like that has any sort of or if you think, more like, leave a comment if you think that that collimated jet pointed straight at us from, oh, I don't know, between 2 and 20,000 light years, between 2,000 and 20,000 light years distance, has any sort of a direct effect on the, let's say, the protonic environment of your local solar system. By the way, thanks Smash team. And stay tuned for a couple of bonus features here. We're going to start talking economics. But first we're going to talk about rare bills. Do you have rare bills with funky seals on them that are in weird colors? Do you have any weird serial numbers? Check your serial numbers. If you have 7 repeating digits in a row, 7 of a kind, super repeaters, double quads, those all raise the value of bills. So now I know most people collect coins, and there's all kinds of different reasons to collect coins. Typically, an old bill doesn't necessarily mean it's worth more money. The main thing is misprints, oddly colored seals, special notes. Here's a $500 bill if you've never seen that. Here's a $1,000 bill. I think there's even a $10,000 bill, which is hilarious because it's got, guess who, Woodrow Wilson on it, the guy that signed the Federal Reserve Act into law in 1913. Links to this article also below the video. That's not money. Those are currency, which we call Federal Reserve notes. Money is a thing that's fungible and has intrinsic value, like gold or silver. Let's talk about the Fed's liquidity response. Excuse me. Well, the Fed's liquidity response is too little, too late. as it has inflated a massive bubble, and now it wants to try to convince everybody that it's making sure that the stock market stays stable and yada, yada, yada. Read the article on Zero Hedge. It's a great article about the Fed and the way the behavior of the Fed operates. Everybody's out there talking about how great the economy is. Well, let's read some stats. U.S. manufacturing has fallen to levels not seen in 10 years. U.S. housing starts fell sharply in September. U.S. retail sales are following a similar pattern. Retail stores are closing at a record rate. Corporate profits have tumbled in 2019. Were you aware that Google missed its earnings expectation by $1.7 billion this past quarter? Yeah, Google. It's junk, just like the software, which is junkware. We hope you're able to click anything and not accidentally click on an ad while viewing our videos on YouTube. And if that's irritating you, check out the videos on BitChute. That's right, bitchute.com/smAsho. We're also on Minds and Gab, etc. Corporate debts are at all-time highs as companies are taking cheap money and buying their own stock to artificially inflate their stock price with the Fed's cheap money, as it artificially controls interest rates, which are the largest block of business in the world. What is an interest rate, folks? An interest rate is the price tag on a loan, and it should not be legal for any banking cartel to artificially adjust that rate. Actual market competition should adjust that rate. There should be competition in the world of banking, and if you think you live in a capitalist society, that evaporated in 1913 when the Federal Reserve Act was signed into law. Thanks, Woodrow. We all assume that Woodrow Wilson has a special place in hell, as he even regretted his own decision to sign it into law, citing it as the biggest mistake he ever made. Go to CNBC for a quick minute as we look for silly headlines like Fed's Clarita, rate cut provides meaningful support to the economy. No, it doesn't. First of all, I want to look at the bond yields, which are still inverted, and they're steeply inverted. Look at the way the yield on the 10-year is 1.714, and the yield on the 5-year is 1.544. This is what happens when we have massive bond purchasing in short yield, short time frame T-bonds, and we won't get all into it, but I did want to show you a chart of the S&P. If you don't think it's a bubble, folks, here's the 1-year chart. Here's the 5-year chart. And the S&P 500, if you weren't aware, is the top 500 stocks, the largest market capitalizations, the 500 largest market capitalization stocks in the U.S. There's the 5-year, still looking like a bubble. Would you buy at these levels? Nobody in their right mind would buy at these levels. And S&P index funds are one of the most popular investments in the world. People who don't know what they're doing, they just buy S&P mutual funds often. And here's the all data. And talk about the inflation of a bubble. There it is, folks. There it is. You see it? Do you see it? Speaking of bubbles, the sun is not one. It does not have a nuclear fusion core inside of it. At least no observations support the nuclear fusion core inside the sun or any other star. We do see a little bit of a filament eruption there. Looks like it splashed back down on the sun on the far side to me. Check it out in the northeast. You see that filament up there. And let's bring it down to the south. Take a look at this sunspot as it evaporates and becomes a plage. And get out of here as it's getting late, folks. So thanks again for tuning in, everybody. Please check us out on patreon.com/smAsho and increase the probability that these videos will continue to exist. Stare at the sun, use the proper instruments like the SDO or perhaps a solar filter on your backyard telescope. And remember when you're staring at the sun not to drink. And if you drink, stare at the sun anyway, just don't drive. Happy All Souls Day, souls. And since it'll never be now again, may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent from your veins.